Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. You are on the .NET Docs Show. I'm your host, David Pine. I'm here with Cam Soper. And our special guest today, we've got Matt Soucoup. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, David. Hey, Cam. How are you guys?
It's Monday.
It's Monday. It is Monday. Yeah, we've got the early Monday slot here to start the week off. So we're going to do it right, though. Matt has been a longtime friend of mine in the developer community. He's an amazing individual, and I'm trying to help kind of build him up. But I actually wore my Xamarin official attire today. I was super excited. I got to put this.
What did you get to put on, Dave? Dave, tell us, please.
Yeah.
He's been assimilated by the .NET Borg.
Yep.
So on
Can't mention Xamarin.
On that note, Matt, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience and what you do and so forth?
Yeah. So I work obviously at Microsoft as a cloud advocate. It used to be cloud developer advocate, but now we're just cloud advocate and focusing on mobile technologies, mainly Xamarin, but also we're expanding out and doing more native type work like Kotlin or Swift or React Native and so on. But really the story is all about doing mobile with a cloud backend on it. So how do you use Xamarin with identity, Azure B2C, or how do you use Xamarin or mobile app with Azure Functions, or maybe even Key Vault, some weird stuff like that. So it's a whole mobile life cycle, but with using Azure to it, because there's a lot of weird parts to it that's different than using Azure with like a web app. So it's really to kind of put those together and make it a coherent narrative for developers. But there's also the very strong Xamarin component to it yet as well, just like developing apps with .NET that run everywhere. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do. A lot of blogs, a lot of videos, a lot of podcasts, a lot of writing, even the documentation, make sure that all our developers know where that's at too. So yeah, pretty much that's what I do.
Oh, cool. So, and I'm sure we'll circle back around to this later in the show. I do a lot of, like the if you go to Microsoft.com/.net/Azure, I actually own the .NET on, or I forget what we say, the Azure for .NET developers or something, but .NET Hearts Azure, we have on there. I own that page, right? And I always kind of thought like, well, mobile development for using Azure resources would be just like using like you kind of alluded to, like a web app or whatever, and you're saying like there's different stacks involved, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, for mobile apps, it's actually really it's different. So the same thing in web apps. There's just a whole bunch of different stacks. But for mobile, you got Xamarin for Microsoft. That's our stuff. But even you consider that, with Xamarin, you still can drop down into iOS. You can still drop down into Android, and using Azure with that is kind of different, because when you're talking iOS, you have to use an iOS SDK with to get at Azure goodness. So I'm thinking identity. I always think about identity. So if you want to access Azure AD B2C, which lets you log into an app using like Twitter or like GitHub. So if you want to use that with iOS, you got to use a specific SDK to do that. But if you want to do that with Android, you got to use a different SDK to do that. And then with Xamarin, you could actually use the Microsoft Authentication Library for .NET to do that. So you can kind of see where I'm getting at here is that there's different ways to do everything, but it's kind of the same way to do everything. And it's a lot like the developing documentation that you mentioned, Cam. There is actually a sibling one for mobile. It's called Azure for Mobile Developers, and pulls a lot of the stuff that kind of the same type of stuff that you all do over the .NET side, but it puts it in a life cycle for mobile development. So a lot of times for mobile development, you're going to have to log in. So there's the identity portion. And then after you log in, you're going to have your tokens, your credentials. You're going to need to use that, redeem it for some information against Azure App Service. So we have documentation to show you how to do that. Well, the problem is that how you do that on Xamarin is going to be completely different than how you do that on, let's say, React Native, or how you go get push notifications, different from Xamarin to React Native. Now, we don't have a ton of React Native documentation yet, but we're trying to write that and work on it. And so to address all that stuff, is we have this documentation center. So you land on it and you kind of figure out, all right, I am a Xamarin developer and this is how I'm going to go about it. Or I'm an iOS Swift developer and here's how I can piece together how I'm using Azure applications or how I'm using my mobile app with Azure for what I need. So if I need identity and I need functions and I need push, I have everything I need. Or if I just need DevOps, go there and I know how to use Azure DevOps with my Swift app, let's say.
Okay, great. So I'm sure we're gonna we'll dive into all that later on in the show. Actually, Dave, are you back now?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know. I think my device got disconnected somehow, and it's like I lost connectivity, and it was entertaining though, right? I see people saying "oops" in the chat there, so it's fun. Monday.
So yeah, it is indeed a Monday. So with what Matt was saying, I think that's a great time to do the checkup. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right. So what do we got for the checkup, Dave?
We've got an Akka link, which is where's the Akka link?
I actually have it right here. It's akka.ms/learn-xamarin-forms.
And Xamarin Forms, I'm not super familiar with this, but I'm assuming that it's C# and XAML, cross-platform, native, all these fun things, right? So what can you tell us about that, Cam?
Do you want me to talk, or do you want
Matt to talk about it? I mean, Matt, are you familiar with this?
All day about this. I will talk all day. We have like an hour. Can we expand this to 4 hours? Is that okay, guys? Your managers don't mind if you do this all day, all week. All right. So here's how Xamarin Forms plays into everything else. So, all right. So if you're going to write a iOS application, right? Normally you would have to do it in Swift. Normally it was Objective-C, but Apple decided that Objective-C developers were using too many square brackets, so they went to Swift. Now that's a joke because Objective-C was just, it's just full of square brackets to actually call functions. All right, anyway, so normally you'd go Swift and use Xcode. But what we have now, a long time ago, was called Xamarin.ios. And you can think of it, what that did is that it .NETicized iOS development for C# developers. And so you still had all of the SDKs. So a text box in iOS, if you're doing Swift, is known as a UI text field or a UI label. So that's how you would get at it. Well, in C# and .NET, it would be the same thing, except it would have all the goodness of C# behind it. So it'd still be a UI text field box or object, but you would have like a .text property on it. And you can just operate on it as you're used to in C# and .NET. And even better is that you could use our favorite .NET things, like use generics or use system.link, all that good stuff on it. So here's where the things really start playing together. Same thing over on Android, except you have all the Android specifics. So we were able to write applications just like you can normally do using the native languages. So we're not there at Xamarin Forms yet, but we're making our way there. What that enables, though, is that we're .NET both places. .NET running everywhere. You can now, though, have NuGet packages. You can now put your core project. Your core project's like business logic, right? The stuff that's going to be the same no matter what you have to do. It goes out, calls web services, does your everyday application logic time.
The x.common libraries.
Yes, exactly. So you have that one place, one time. You can use it in both platforms. All right, now here's where Forms comes in. Forms is, all developers are lazy, and like there's certain fields or certain like controls in each platform that are the same, like labels. You're going to have a label in Android. You're going to have a label in iOS. Well, there's no problem that can't be solved without abstracting it up one level, right? So let's make a new, essentially UI framework, even though Forms is more than that can do this, that you can program against the label. And then when it compiles, it's still going to compile an Android application. It's still going to compile an iOS application that emits truly native. It's going to emit a UI label. But over in Xamarin Forms, you're just programming against the label. Still .NET, still C#, but you have this new abstraction above it.
And that's one of the
whole lot
things.
more.
I was gonna say that's one of those things that's been a huge misconception for the longest time. Is there's been a lot of community members that I have talked to that have personally said, "Oh, it's not the same. It doesn't compile down natively, right? It just sits on top of it. And it doesn't. It's some sort of But that's not true. It is 100% native, right?
100% native, just like you were sitting down and writing Swift.
Right.
Except for us .NET developers, it's much faster to sit down and code and get everything out the door, and you're still going to get that native performance. I mean, you still could write a bad app. I mean, you could still make it bloat and make it run slow, but you can do it over, in Swift that way too. So all my apps, they run super slow. That's why I have to get a big computer and make them run fast.
So I was going to say we should probably jump into the hallway track, but be sure to check out the checkup link here. Again, that's aka.ms / learn Xamarin Forms, and hopefully you'll pick something up there.
All right, so I'll talk about that learn module because I love talking. That learn module, I think that's a whole learning path that we have up there. And so all of those were built off of the old Xamarin University, or they were taken from theirs. And that whole Xamarin University thing used to be like this premium learning thing to build apps, all you could want, learning from zero all the way up. And so here, Learning Path kind of took that same content, put it into the great Microsoft Learn format, so now you can go through step by step and learn how to build a Xamarin Forms app. We got XAML in there, you got how to consume REST services, the whole shebang. Learn everything that you want to do about Xamarin, learn as you go. And the best thing about Microsoft Learn is it's free. Free.
That is, and that's actually one of the things that we love about working on that platform is we can. When I say we, I mean Scott and I have written a lot of Learn modules together, and all the content is free. Most of the Azure stuff that you want to do out there, there's a sandbox environment that they can spin up that will allow you to try it out without even having to sign up for like a trial account or anything like that. So with that, want to hop into the hallway track, guys?
Do it.
All right, so Matt, I can tell you are pretty passionate about mobile development.
I like to talk. Yeah, no, I love it. I've been doing this stuff back since it was called, what was it called? Mono.ios. And, it's still Mono underneath the covers. And it was used to then go into Ximian and then Xamarin. So yeah, a long time, because, like 2010. Wow. And it's like 10 years. And I blogged about it and did a lot of talks. And that's how David and I met, was through user groups and then conferences. And now both work at Microsoft. So yeah, I really like talking about it, and so yeah, love it.
So I'm curious. You've been doing it for such a long time. When you first started, and you said you started with Mono, some of the Mono stuff. Did you do any of the native stuff before, like native mobile?
Yeah. So never native Android, but native iOS.
Okay.
And here's the funny story with the origin story is it was Objective-C back then, because Swift didn't come out until much later. But so I used to do consulting, and then I took on an iOS project to do, and it was, you're learning a whole new language. Now you're learning Objective-C, and you're also learning a whole new framework, right? You're learning all of the iOS and the UI kit framework at the same time. It was really, so two whole new things at the same time. It's kind of, it's a little bit overwhelming, especially when you're on a deadline. So I always knew about this thing. I've been read about it in actual paper magazine, and I was like, well, maybe I should give this a shot. This Mono thing where you can actually, this Mono iOS, and run it C# and it compiles down. So I hunted it down, ran it, and it worked. I mean, it was rough back then, but it worked. And ever since, you can use C# to write iOS applications, and it solved me the issues of having to learn Objective-C, and stayed with it ever since.
Oh, wow, that's such a cool story.
Yeah, and it's really, you're still going to have to learn eventually, because long story short, you're still going to have to learn the platforms.
Yeah.
But it's not nice that it actually helps you out so much. And it kind of like, I don't want to say it saved me, but it kind of saved me with that project to be able to write it quicker just by being able to use .NET and C#.
So I'm gonna just jump in real quick here. I've spoken before on this show. I don't really do UI, right? UI is weird and scary to me because you have to be able to get, think about what the user is going to do, and I don't want to think about what the user is doing. I want to think about what my code is doing. I want to see this. I want to see C# on mobile devices, and I use mobile devices, but I've never coded for them. Do you have stuff to show us, Matt?
I have stuff. Let's switch over.
And while you're pulling that up, I just wanted to say that I think this is kind of an interesting philosophy. Like if you've ever followed like JavaScript was born in the browser, intended for that. And it's now slowly evolving to where you're seeing it running in the server side. It's running almost anywhere. And that's true now with .NET, where you can run it, typically for like desktop apps or whatever. Now we're doing cloud native. We're going to be doing gaming. We're going to be doing IoT, all of these, different workloads, and mobile being one of those. And I think it's really, really cool to see how far it's evolved, right? Like how much better has it gotten over the 10 years you've been playing with it, Matt? A little bit better?
Million times better. I mean, you used to have to do it in Mono Studio to develop, and the icon for Mono Studio, and Mono Studio is actually still around. Mono Develop, my bad, Mono Develop. And it used to be like a seashell icon, it looked like. And then all of a sudden they moved Mono Develop into Visual Studio over into Mac. And even back when they did that, and that was only like 3 years ago, it still had rough edges. But the fact that they're iterating on it super fast, it's getting better and better. The tooling is way better, and we'll take a look at some of the tooling that we have out just to make the development process faster. It's even Xamarin Forms, I'll call it development tooling just because it helps the development process go so much quicker. But there's tons of things that just from back then to now is amazing. And even just like the Apple Xcode and all that stuff to make it better. It's like you take a look at what you did way back when and all the hoops that you had to jump through to make just something stupid work. It's now I don't even know half the stuff that iOS can do. But it's all out there and you just like, whoa. And that's the hard thing about development, right? You can't develop with it unless you know about it. And, there's just so much innovation going on that's like, but yeah.
Cool. So let's take a look here. What do you have open here for us?
All right. So let's, where's my mouse? All right. So I think this will work. All right. I'm going to bring this up right here. So you can see the simulator over on the side.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what this is, it is the official Entity Framework Core sample that we have out on the Microsoft Docs. Okay. So Entity Framework works with Xamarin, which in itself is pretty cool.
So wait a second, Entity Framework. So you've got a data store on the local device.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, so it's SQLite running on device, and they'll run both on iOS and they'll run both on Android. And all the code for it is sitting in your shared project, which I'll explain the project structure in a little bit. But yeah, so you're just writing your code once and having it run both. I'm going to call iOS and Android your head projects, so you get to run them on both head projects. So yeah, it's super useful and neat. And so the app itself here is kind of plain Jane. It's my typical cam. You said you don't do front end, neither do I. I just kind of try to make it as good as people tell me, and it usually doesn't look that good. But anyways, this is kind of samples or copies what we have over on the web version of the Getting Started for Entity Framework. It's the blogs, lists different blogs. You can go in and see blog posts. So let's add one. Let's say .NET Docs. Computer's running just a tad slow, but we'll do it anyway. Body goes here. Save it. There it is, .NET Docs post, and then go back in it. We see it, and it's not on this blog.
Now, as someone who's not like I said, I've never done any mobile development at all. As I watch like the UI in your simulator there, and I see, you know, animation happening, that's like OS level stuff, right?
That's all OS level, and this is specific to iOS. So if I would start up my Android emulator, which I'll be honest, I'm hesitant to do, otherwise we'll slow everything down. It would do Android idioms. It would look like an Android app running, not look like it, because it would be an Android app running by itself.
Gotcha.
So like iOS kind of slides over, and to do the Android thing, Android slides over too, but then we would have Android, instead of here it says blogs back button, the Android back is a little bit different. So everything there would be specific, the Android idioms. And to get those animations, I don't do anything. They more or less come free to me, but I'm using the iOS navigation stack to make that happen. And if I do here, it kind of slides up from the bottom. That's, again, modal window. Again, well, we'll take a peek at the code. That all happens super free for me. All right. So how does this happen? Where does the magic come from? All right. So over here on the left, I have a Android project. I have an iOS project, and I have the shared project. And this shared project is my Forms project. So the iOS project really is a bunch of boilerplate, and then there's this app delegate. And I just wanted to show off this app delegate real quickly, because this is the only thing, I mean, when it launches, it goes into here. And I have a couple experimental flags newed up, just because I want to show off some stuff a little bit later. But it just calls forms.init, launches it, and then returns. This is all that's happening specifically that I care about on the platform. So, otherwise,
I was just going to say, so there's a similar path in the Android project.
Yes, there is. So if I go over to Android, it's called main activity instead of app delegate. Load it up, and here it's just because Android uses a tab bar and a toolbar to do its material design. That's just its idiom. It just calls on create. I init up some Xamarin Essentials, which I can talk about too. Then it finally inits the forms, and then load application, and then done. Again, normally if I'm doing a file new Xamarin Forms app, I don't even touch this. I don't even go in here at all. So
interesting.
Yeah. Super nice. And this, if I needed to, I mean, I could. I mean, if I really wanted to get down and make this look super pretty, if I needed to do something, let's say, like Apple, like whatever the game framework is, like Apple Arcade, if there's anything in there I needed to do like that only Apple did and I needed to specifically get at it, I could go down here and actually do my Apple-y stuff. But,
so what is the difference between like these two projects in terms of, I mean, I see that there's different app, main activity and app delegate, but what does the actual UI components or code look like?
Yeah, here there is, other than what we just looked at, app delegate, Android stuff. And you can see like we're using UI Kit and Foundation. These are Apple frameworks.
So,
so
I was going to say the UI actual like code behind stuff, that's not even in the platform specific projects. So it's almost like the platform specific projects that in this specific example are just like boilerplate.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. They are just there to hold a reference to our Xamarin Forms project.
Wow.
And that's all they do in this case. And then, I mean, obviously, because Xamarin or the references really makes this Xamarin Forms project a part of that project. You know, that at that point they're part of it, and Xamarin Forms takes care of all the hard work of actually making it truly an iOS application.
And what is,
as we can see here, this is iOS.
Right. What does the shared code look like then?
Yeah, let's get into that. Shut that down. And so then where Where Xamarin Form launches is into, there's an application.xaml class. Now, David, you said something before that you can build with XAML. You can also build with C# if you wanted to. You could build up your whole UI with C#. I personally prefer XAML just because you can see it better. It lays out on a page better. But here's an example of actually building it with C#. So main page, this is just, it's saying this is the thing that happens to be on the screen right now, more or less. You can think about it. This is my main page of the thing. It's part of the base application. It's really, this is how you new things up. And when I get started here, I'm saying new navigation page. That's my name page. Well, navigation page kind of sounds pretty familiar what it might do, or guessable. It's going to provide me all this navigation that I'm getting over here. Puts stuff on the stack. Let's say pop stuff off the stack. And so the child of that's going to be blogs page. So let's take a look at what blogs page looks like. Now I have some XAML. All right. So let's talk about the stuff that matters. In here, content page.content. This is where everything goes. And actually, I'm going to actually start this up so we can actually see some cool things start happening. All right, so this is a collection view, and a collection view is a good way to start displaying data. And you can see there's a bunch of different things like selection changed. If you remember back in the good old web forms days, you can actually do like code behind and have it reach out to the code behind, like a .cs class, I call an event. This is similar. And I'm doing it a lazy way to do it, but either way, it's calling an event.
And it's so the same with like WinForms too. They had the code behind, not just web forms.
Yep.
Okay.
And yeah, so essentially what it's just doing, we're saying, all right, I'm gonna have a stack layout within my item template here. And then that stack layout, I'm putting a nice frame, and that frame just has a label in it. So what I could also do here, or go ahead, you can, I'll just type while you.
Well, I was just going to ask, do you know how different this WPF, I'm sorry, this this XAML is compared to the XAML in like WPF and the other UI stacks that we have?
Yeah, it's not the same. It's similar enough that if you knew it, you get frustrated, right? If you knew UWP, WPF, you'd be like, so similar, but it's not 100% the same. But it's enough where you can overcome it. So you remember way back when, I think build of 2016, we announced XAML standard. It's supposed to be kind of like .NET standard. That went nowhere. It was supposed to unify everything, but it just didn't happen. So Xamarin Forms XAML is different than like UWP XAML or WPF XAML, but it's similar enough where you'll get the hang of it. And the reason why it's different is that WPF and UWP have different controls and way to do things that are not available in the Xamarin portion of it. So you got to remember that the Xamarin Forms XAML has to account for things like iOS and Android on it. So as I mentioned before, Xamarin Forms kind of sits up that, it abstracts the UI a bit. And so that's what this is trying to take care of here. And that's why they really can't make it 100%.
And I guess to add to that real quick is like if you're a web developer coming to mobile development and you're introduced to Xamarin Forms and you're trying to get, acclimated to XAML, hopefully there's good documentation that will help support kind of discovering some of these things. But you can, it's almost like synonymous with like HTML in that it's XML based. There's attributes, name value pairs. You can have events on different elements, and it's, it's fairly intuitive with how, the help of IntelliSense and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah. It'll, nothing's a, one day you got it going, but it's not going to be terrible. And the best part is that you can actually use CSS to style your Xamarin Forms app.
Really?
Which is crazy. Yeah.
That is crazy. So before you added, go ahead.
No, I said I can't do it because I don't know any CSS attributes, but you could if you did.
Is it like full CSS, like CSS3, like the latest standard of like? Like
No.
pseudo selectors and stuff like that, or like?
It's very close. I mean, it's not the standard, but it's very close.
Okay.
When I say very close, I mean pretty close.
Yeah.
But no, if you knew CSS, yeah, you could step right in.
Cool.
And
That's really
like
neat.
classes and all that other, yeah.
So you added a label here to your XAML and you saved
Yeah.
it.
Right.
And
So let me actually make the font. Come on, size. My computer. Brand new MacBook. Super fast. Title.
I think that happens once you're streaming and pushing out a bunch of video and screens. And
Yeah. All right. So I have high font size title. So I'm going to hit save, and you can see that there's high over there. But when I hit save, it's going to get a little bit bigger. And so what this does here, it helps me speed up my inner dev loop here. So I'm going to iterate and try to make because nobody's a UI designer, and at least no developer seems to be good at it. There is some, but I'm not. Cam said he's not. David, I'm not sure how good you are at designing UIs.
Dave's actually not bad. He did our website.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he doesn't give himself any credit.
No.
But so here we go. Oops. We could go in and actually, change things around and see how things are looking. Let's just give it, how about color? What is that? Text color, red. Hit save. And, kind of build up this UI to see how it looks just by hitting save and exploring around, and that really beats the old way of making that change, recompiling, let it go back out to the simulator and see what it looks like. And especially if this can actually handle like hex.
Oh, hex, nice.
Yeah, so you can't really even see that because whatever F0s come out to be. So
does it do like the 3-code hex? Could you do like CCC?
Good question. Let's find out. CCC, what color that should be?
I don't know.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
perfect. That's pretty cool.
Someone had idea what that's supposed to be.
It's shorthand, so that means it's really just 6 C's. Like if you have.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So if
that's
we had
we had
a statement here from Sky Color X before, and they had said soon to be Maui. I know that there's a lot of excitement around .NET 5 and the wave going into .NET 6 and what that means for Xamarin Forms. Is there any information you can share about that as it relates to Maui?
Yeah, so Maui is going to go, so it's .NET Maui, and it stands for Multi-Application User Interface, if I'm correct. And so what that's going to do, one of the things that it's going to do is that it's going to essentially get rid of the Android and iOS head projects. I'm going to say it's going to clean up the user interface here better. It still does the same thing behind the scenes, but it makes everything a little bit easier to use. And it's going to change your design idioms as well. So Xamarin.Forms, I believe, is going to become, and don't quote me on this, system.ui. So it is becoming, .NET is subsuming Xamarin at this point.
So I have,
it's like the merge is complete.
I have a question about that. I'm going to actually call up a Corwin of Amber made a comment earlier a little while ago about when we were talking about the head projects and how they also can contain helper code for platform specific functionality.
Yeah.
I presume that's still going to be supported. What's that going to look like in terms of in terms of project organization? Is it still all going to just sit in one project, or how's that going to work?
Yeah. So it'll all sit here in one project, and I'm not sure because things are going to be changing between now and .NET 6 when it gets released. But yeah, you're still going to be able to get down into the platform projects just as easily as you can today to do. So what you could do today with it is essentially put your code here, make it implement an interface, and just use like a dependency service to get at it in your core project.
Awesome.
So what we could do is I'll give you guys a link to where they're discussing .NET Maui and how it's going to be coming together. And one other thing that it does is that Xamarin Forms, its design paradigm really is based off of model view model. .NET Maui is going to go to a model view update. You still can use MVVM if you want, but it's going to also support like an MVU architecture as well. So which is like this huge mind shift.
That's like the Elm architecture, right? That's pretty neat. I
Yeah,
was reading about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I understand it all. Yeah, it's more of a functional type of programming architecture. But it's the modern.
There's a series of questions coming in, so we got a lot of engagement. I'm going to start just kind of rattling through these here, and we'll go in fast order. So, does Xamarin offer any advantages over React Native apart from the fact that it's easier for .NET developers to pick up?
Yeah. So, okay, here's my 100% is eager to say if you already know React, you're probably going to be better off staying with React Native, right? I mean, that's just the way of the world, right? But Xamarin is going to give you. I mean, React Native you can kind of suck in like Cocoa Pods and everything else, but you are getting more of a. If you already know C# and .NET, Xamarin, if you already know React, JavaScript, React Native is going to get you where you need to go. As far as like getting down to the platforms, you can get them at them both. So they're similar, and I think it comes down to where you are most comfortable. To be quite honest.
Cool. No, that makes sense, and I think we say that a lot about a lot of different things. Where it's really as a developer, one of the big things that you have to overcome is realizing which tool to pick for the job. And, that goes back to your team's mentality of what they're capable with, what they're familiar with, and knowing that you're going to have to work with them for a while, right?
Yep.
We've got another question here from Johnny. He says, what about the transparent effect? So is this something that XAML supports out of the box here? Is there any sort of transparency capabilities? And
when we're talking transparent, are we talking like background transparency or I guess
I think that was posted a little while ago. I was assuming that it was when we were showing off some of the XAML stuff here. Maybe, it's maybe background color or.
Yeah, I mean, if the control itself can be transparent, you can make the yes, I guess is the question or the answer. So
cool. So transparency is supported. Yeah. That's good to know. There was another one here. I saw a Blazor mobile bindings demo, and it looked like a beautiful merger between Blazor and Xamarin. I didn't even know the Blazor. Well, I think I did kind of know that Blazor is coming to a mobile platform near you.
I'll be honest. I cannot speak to that one super well because I don't know it, but I do know they're still working on it. So awesome. Stay tuned.
Yeah, if you like Blazor, that's going to be cool.
Yeah.
Will we be able to create apps on Linux as well?
All right. So, go ahead.
And I think that's still that's from when we were talking about Maui specifically. I want to call that out.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what you can do if they're going to have actual implementation for Linux for Maui. That I don't know. And when we give you the GitHub issue, I guess it is, when they're discussing the future, they might be able to answer that, or it might be answered already. There is a GTK sharp, for lack of a better word, runtime for Xamarin. So you can make this to run on GTK sharp. I think it's community supported. I don't know if the team is supporting it. So just like .NET runs on .NET runs on Linux, you can get this to run on Linux too. But for Maui, I honestly don't know what the future holds for that one.
Yeah, they said that they're really curious about it because Xamarin apps and even UWP are way less resource hungry than React Native and even Electron apps. So that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we've got one more. I don't know if this is a comment yet. I'm going to click. Press buttons, hope for the best. It will be easier for React Native, Flutter, Swift UI, Compose developers to pick up Maui since it's all MVU, more or less. Okay. Interesting.
I just, So there's another UI design architecture for me to learn now, and I'm still stuck on MVC. I still haven't made the jump to MVVM yet. So yeah, that comment fills me with anxiety. Just throwing that out there.
Well, either you can do one of two things, Cam. You could either just skip MVVM, or MVVM really is just MVCs with more V's and M's added onto it. So
that's a great way of looking at it.
Yep. No, it's super similar. Your view model is really just your controller, and
so.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's been a lot of talk about the MVU pattern. So we actually just covered this in a recent article that went out, The Evolution of .NET Core to .NET 5, talking about it specifically. And again, it's coming from the Elm architecture. So this is an example user interface code, even though it looks like purely C#, right? So we've got this read-only state, which contains ints, and then there's a count initialized to 0. We declaratively with attributes say that this is the body, and that view is expressed as this function where it says, here's a new stack layout, here's a new label, welcome to .NET Maui, here's a button, and then the text for the button is going to be you clicked X number of times, and then the function for that click event handler is basically incrementing the value of the button. So it's very, very kind of fluent. And imagine, the separation here, instead of writing your markup with XAML and then having events and then in the code behind having another thing. So this is kind of a play on those two. And it's an interesting concept. And I'm really curious to see how well it's adapted.
Yeah, it's MVU is the modern type of architecture. And I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm excited to learn how to do it. And yeah, I guess you lift the state up and it's more functional. And it should be easier to maintain at that point if everything I read is correct. So yeah, I'm excited, but I can't tell you for sure how great it is, other than everybody loves it who's used it in other frameworks.
Right. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions we've had that I can. Well, actually, was there a couple more, Cam, that came through?
Oh, I was just having a little side conversation. It didn't really relate, I think, directly to the Xamarin topic. I'll go ahead and throw it up there. Corwin of Amber in the Twitch chat had been asking about SQLite and said they've been doing SQLite access directly, and what benefits does EF offer? So I was just chatting with them a little bit about EF. It gives us, you're working with POCOs rather than directly with SQL, and that you do lose some performance, a tiny bit, but in my humble opinion, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, yes, for sure. And so yeah, exactly. You do lose a little bit of performance, and at least in iOS and Android world, your app does get a little bit bigger because you're dragging in a bunch of other, other stuff along with an NET framework. But yeah, I think the fact that let's pull up my service, I mean, this is what you're kind of looking like when you're building it up, right? You're initializing SQLite, you're making sure that it's created. And then my database right here is called blogs.db3. And then, let's see, let's go to add a blog page behind the scenes. So all I'm doing here is creating a new blog, making sure my blogging context is there, and then add to it, and then save my changes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so that's what NET framework gets you, is it makes a lot of things easier and makes it more, I'm going to say, gets rid of having to write SQL. Who likes to write SQL?
Well, you brought up the adage before, right? Of there's no problem that can't be solved with one additional layer of abstraction, and this is clearly one of my favorite layers of abstraction.
Yeah. And SkyColorX calls attention to that by saying that raw SQL can be more optimized compared to EF, and that's very, very true.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I still find it fascinating that, basically software engineering, even in modern times, is essentially just moving different bits of data, whether or not we're presenting it or, processing it in some sort of way. It's just transforming data throughout the entire series, and it doesn't really matter as much. Performance is a feature, so to speak, right?
Yep. Forms over data. That's all we do over and over again.
Right.
But Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, you can really go down to, and if you just wanted to do SQL, yeah, you can do it. And there's another library out there called SQLite.net, which is going to be faster than NET Framework, but with NET Framework, it's going to work across like the whole Microsoft stack. SQLite.net's awesome. It's the king. But yeah, it's there. You got to pick the tool that works for you.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, but what's the there's a new like .NET specific lightweight database that I've seen out there that makes me think of SQLite, but it's not SQLite. LightDB. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
It does sound familiar. I don't know much about it or anything.
I wonder if that's. I'm gonna have to look that up now.
I'm curious if any of our viewers are aware of that. If you are, feel free to throw that in the chat.
Yep. Yeah, I found it. Here we go. So yeah, this. So I somebody turned me onto this not long ago as an alternative for SQLite. That it's an embedded NoSQL database, and apparently supported on Xamarin. So
sweet.
Oh wow, interesting.
Well, that's
so
cool.
It's NoSQL, SQL-like syntax. And so it serves as like an actual ORM though, or like a micro ORM, or what's it look like in terms of getting like the POCOs out?
So that I can't tell you. I have not used it at all. I've just been told, hey, you should go check this thing out. And I was wondering if anybody had any opinions on it.
Throw the link here in the chat, and we'll. I'm curious now. I want to dive into that a bit too myself.
There we go.
Awesome. Cool.
So yeah, back to Matt's screen.
So Entity Framework, you've got this elegant little way to persist, and I noticed that you're using the asynchronous APIs, which is always cool. What are some of the advantages to that in the context of a mobile app? Is that still relevant?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, the thing is with them, you have to go asynchronous on a mobile app, because if you lock that UI thread for any amount of time, the app's gonna die on you. It's going to kick you out. Like on Android, it always says, this app has stopped responding. Do you want to wait or kill it?
Oh,
well,
wow.
That's because, yeah. So if I got rid of this, and this was a big change. So let's say this is calling out to a web service. Let's say that's what this is doing. And the web service is super slow or whatnot. If this wasn't doing async and it was just sitting there waiting and blocking the UI thread, Android would kick it out. iOS would crash. So we want to push it off to a background and then do something else.
Or like, yeah, I was just going to say, like, another real world situation with mobile is, maybe they're not connected to Wi-Fi and they have to go over the cellular.
Yeah. And so here's a cool thing. Now, remember when I mentioned back in the Android thing, they were initializing Xamarin.Essentials. So what Xamarin.Essentials does is that it gives us a bunch of ways to access the platform stuff, but within one library. So you can see here, I have like a accelerometer, all this other stuff, battery state. These are all things that you have to do differently depending on whether you're on Android or iOS. But I can do, I think it's called network. It's where am I? Let's see, what is it called? This is where I always kind of go through, where am I? What is it called? That was network, not network access. Should be called. Anyways, I can go through here and check whether I am connected or not. How about connectivity?
Connectivity, yeah.
Yeah, so I can do connectivity, my network access. If it's equal to right now,
internet local unknown.
Yeah.
Constrained internet would constrained internet, is that like just like basically just saying that it's like somehow buffered, right, or like a
yeah, not doing super well. So we can see what we're, so we don't get a you're not connected, you don't blow up when you're trying to actually call
right
out.
Right.
So, and this is, I mean, this is super, I mean, I got to spell, but you can see all the things that we have down here. I mean,
and Essentials is Essentials not related to Forms? I noticed that those are like different namespaces. So we've talked about Xamarin Forms,
yes.
and that's like the UI, but Essentials is like lower level cross-platform bits.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So Forms is its own framework, and Essentials is, you can think of it, for lack of a better word, as helpers. I mean, it would be helpers to get at, you know, my battery information.
Right.
So I can get at like battery input changed, or, you know, or so somebody actually plugged in, or what's my current charge level. So it's, Forms is a framework overarching on how you build an app. Essentials is giving you information about things.
Right. And that's irregardless of the platform though too, right? So Xamarin Forms is for iOS and Android. Does that include Windows?
Xamarin Forms? Yeah.
Okay. And then the Essentials is the same type of thing, cross-platform. So this would be a battery charge level, regardless if I'm on my iPhone or Cam's on his Android or maybe his Surface Duo he just picked up.
Yep. So, now, good question. Now, when you said Windows, I don't know if Xamarin Forms has a Windows Forms port, but it does have a UWP one.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And so so what they did for Essentials is that there's actually an Android specific battery charge class that does all the Android specific things that you need to do, but you can access it up here in the shared project with just one API.
And the nice thing about the shared API from like an architectural standpoint of the people who are maintaining these libraries that make this possible is when it's abstracted away like this, if Android decides to, you know, change out its underlying implementations of things or their API surface area, but iOS doesn't, for example, then the maintainers of this library only have to go update just the specific bits for Android. But you as a developer don't care.
I don't care.
Right.
Which makes it even better.
That's cool.
And Xamarin's maintaining it, Microsoft maintains it, so you know they're going to be on it every time something launches.
So we have a question from the chat. SkyColorX asks about the Xamarin Essentials, that it has maps. So where are those maps coming from? Is that like the, you know, coming from the Maps SDK of like the operating system that it's on? What's going on there?
Yeah, so when you're using Maps, it is coming from iOS or coming from Android. Now, generally, what you're going to have to do, so the map here are really, you know, they're helpers. So there is actually let me go down here. Oh, good, I spelled it out. So there's actually a Xamarin Forms.maps NuGet that you actually add in. And so this is going to give you the renderers to the platform specific maps below it. And then once we have that in there, then we can actually start messing with, you know, it's going to look like an iOS map. It's going to look like a Google map over on Android.
That's awesome.
Yes. Long story short, it's the specific or that platform one.
So that's just for rendering maps. Now for reading like individual map data, that's going to be like and using like an API key to get at like the underlying. I guess what I'm trying to say is that he makes the question of where do you pass the API key, and what I'm thinking I'm getting here is that that's not relevant. The API key isn't relevant to the rendering of the map, right? Is that?
Yeah, Android you need to do an API key on Android, and you will be able to do that through this NuGet. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My misunderstanding. Okay.
Yeah, Android's weird. Everything about Android is weird. So.
I love that statement. We're gonna use that as a quote for the show. Everything about Android is weird.
So yeah, Google the docs. The docs have you covered for all this stuff.
Cool.
And you can actually draw on these too. So like you can draw outlines, so you could do like a map my run. You can recreate that if you wanted to. with all this stuff.
Awesome. Well, we're approaching our time box. We've got about 5 minutes left. Is there any additional resources you want to share, or like closing thoughts, or any get people excited?
Guys, would you believe we did not cover anything I have mapped out for today? Nothing. Seriously, nothing. I have a whole paper here. I mean, I wanted to cover embedded fonts, shells, GIFs, the new expander view. Nothing. We covered nothing.
So would you be willing to come back?
Yeah, for sure. I love talking about this.
Oh, we can tell.
Space too. It'll be a different house and everything.
Oh, that's so funny.
So this is great. This is a great overview. I'm glad we did this. This has been a ton of fun. And I guess that learning course, the learning path and module that we talked about at the beginning, that's beautiful. That'd be a perfect place for people to go and get started on the Xamarin Forms journey for sure. And the docs are top notch as well.
So we've got 5 minutes. We did a bunch of overview stuff. In this 5 minutes, I suggest maybe you share your screen, continue sharing your screen, and take on one of your favorite, little bullets there that you wanted to cover. One of the things. What can we cover?
Sure. Let's do. We got 5 minutes. What I'm going to do, I'm going out to the web browser. We see everybody really quick. I'm going to go to fonts.google.com, right?
Yep.
So let's pick a font. Let's pick Ranchers here. So I'm going to go Ranchers. I'm going to do download font library. All right. I already have it downloaded. Cool. So let's going to go. I already have it downloaded, which means I can do this. Add new folder fonts, all right? So let's, in that font folder, add an existing file. Download Ranchers regular TTF. You see it's kind of all that fun stuff?
Yep.
Right there, copy it to the directory. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here, right-click on it, right-click on it, and change the build action. Make sure it's embedded. Make sure compile it into the everything.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I'm going to go to my assembly info. I'm going to do using Xamarin.Forms, and then just say assembly. What is it called? Let's see, do I have export font? Come on. All right, and it's called Rangers. Come on, Matt. RANCAPRS. Yep. regular.ttf. And we'll give it an alias equals, we'll just say Ranchers. Look good? Am I going to get any errors? Nope. All right. So let's do the blogs post right here where we did the hi.
Yeah.
Let's do font family, Ranchers. Let's run it. Come on. We should have a nice little font. And that's how easy it is to start doing a bunch of cool UI stuff.
Wow, that's going to be super cool.
If it works, let's hope I didn't miss any steps. There it is, yeah.
Wow, and then that's a way to make it, that's going to be cross-platform then, rather than relying on what you might assume is kind of built into each of the different platforms.
Right, yeah, it's just putting a custom font in there. It's that quickly.
Wow, that's so cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
.NET Docs. So cool.
Yeah, custom fonts, everything like that, just like that.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I've learned a ton. One of the big things I've been really hesitant about is trying to actually do my first initial Xamarin project. So I think you've inspired me. I should just bite the bullet and go do it.
Yeah, just mess around. I mean, you have fun. You got that little learning curve, but once you get over it, you start really having. It's always neat to see things run on device, especially when you deploy it to one of your devices. And then it's .NET behind the scenes, right? So you're going to be able to do all the .NET stuff that you know and love, and that helps you get going so much quicker.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Matt. And Cam, who do we have next week?
We have our good friend, John Alexander.
And he's going to be talking about
So he is working with Project Bonsai now. He's a developer advocate for Project Bonsai. So we were actually talking about using Project Bonsai. He and I. I think folks are familiar with my barbecue smoker. Project Bonsai is an AI focused on industrial applications, like smoking things. That instead of machine learning algorithms, you don't need to know anything about like machine learning algorithms. It's all about machine teaching, right? You come up with a model and you simulate it, and you teach the machine. You teach the Project Bonsai how what the acceptable outcome is, and it learns how to get there on its own.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Well, until next time, thanks everyone.
Bye.